Guys, I don't know what happened there. I got a phone call and I ended it, but I've had phone calls during these multiple times and I ended. I don't know why it shut off. I don't know why it shut off, but I didn't say anything too crazy at that point. But yeah, it doesn't matter anyway. I mean, I was just talking about myself. I was talking about myself with law school. I didn't go to law school in the end. I would have gone to Cornell. I was waitlisted at Michigan. I probably would have gotten into Michigan because I got it. I got waitlisted at Michigan with my first LSAT score, which was lower than my second LSAT score, which they hadn't gotten yet. So I would have gotten into Michigan, but I decided not to go to law school. And I probably would have gone to Cornell anyway, just because even though it wasn't as good as Michigan, it was sort of more. I don't know, but I didn't go. I didn't go. But the point is, like, you have all these hack lawyers. All these fucking hack lawyers are saying like they're not going to take this. Doesn't matter. They're not going to do it. Within this lawsuit, Gorsuch actually they quoted Gorsuch in the case 2 weeks ago, and you guys remember we talked about this, right? That this is a precursor. We know what this court split's going to be. It's going to be 5-4. It's going to be 5-4. So hypothetically, if Supreme Court decides against us, do you believe Trump's next bet is martial law? Trump. First off, let's talk about what is the Supreme Court at this point deciding. People in prior to actually reading the case and what's being asked, and prior to actually the case even being filed, I did not. I assumed the 14th because I assumed the Supreme Court was going to decide the election. This lawsuit doesn't even, and this is another reason why it's going to be a win, is because they're not asking the Supreme Court to decide the election. All they're asking the Supreme Court to do is to block the Electoral College from certifying the election on December 14th. All they're asking for is to allow a discovery period. It's actually a very modest request because there is no constitutional relevance to the 14th. In fact, Ruth Bader Ginsburg herself said back in, I believe it was Bush versus Gore, or I don't know if it was that, but she said in a prior case that the 14th doesn't have any real relevance. The 6th of January does have relevance because that's when Congress meets and affirms the Electoral College. And so Congress might need to know by the 6th. But the only date that really, really matters is January 20th, the inauguration. It's the only constitutional date that matters. And so what they're asking basically, and the way that their rhetoric was positioned with this was incredible. It's incredible rhetoric. And they basically said that, either the Constitution doesn't matter at all, or you have to allow us to hear this out. And they had ample evidence that, that massive fraud had been committed in Biden's favor, but most importantly, that this fraud was done by stealing power from the state legislature. This is really important, and that's why it's relevant. And so it's like you have all these hack lawyers, idiots and hacks saying there's no way they're going to take it. Of course they're going to take it. They're the only court that has jurisdiction over it. And right now they're at the point, and we're going to see big rallies for Trump this weekend in DC. I would go if we weren't, a week or two out. But we're talking about big stuff. We're talking about big stuff, right? The lawsuits in the smaller courts were to prep the public to wake up and to expose the corruption in the entire system. And of course, to encourage these legislatures to understand their power, because as a result of these hearings, we now have a large part, usually a majority, very often the leadership of these houses and senates in these swing states who are now signed on the lawsuit. So guys, this is what's going to happen. Okay, this is what's going to happen. This is the adjusted timeline. This is what's going to happen. We are going to have on the 14th or 13th, 14th, probably on the 14th, we are going to have the Supreme Court extend the electoral deadline. They're going to extend it for discovery. And there's going to be a big meltdown from the left because they're trying to push this shit through. They're trying to push it through. You've seen the chart, right? We're now at the point where SCOTUS is like SCOTUS might take it, but it's not going to matter. That's where we're at, right? They said SCOTUS isn't going to take it. Now SCOTUS is taking it, but it's not going to matter. They're not going to rule against it. The next one is SCOTUS is, stealing the election. Barrett shouldn't have been on the bar, whatever. One question: are you a Trump supporter? I don't even really. This is total gaslighting. What do you think? Should I? What do you think? Should I block preemptively? Should I hear him out? Yeah, of course I'm a Trump supporter. Look at my fucking shirt. Look at my fucking shirt. What am I talking about here? Of course I'm a Trump supporter. I mean, again, it's not left versus right. It's dissonance versus resonance. I mentioned this in a tweet the other day, but I don't think people appreciate it. Most spiritual people are completely detached from politics. I mean, like the high level. I don't talk like I'm spiritual. I mean, like people who are legitimately highly, highly spiritually evolved. They do not engage with politics. They don't engage with politics because politics is a lower vibration sort of thing, especially the politics as we know it, which is basically, it's basically corruption and manipulation. I mean, I wanted to be in politics when I was younger, and then I was like, no, there's no way I'm going into politics as I got older, because it really is a place for low vibration people, except maybe that's going to change, and then maybe I will go into it, because there's a difference between politicians and there's a difference between politicians and statesmen. But in the current system, it's disgusting. And so anybody who had any sort of 5D lens had no interest in being involved in politics whatsoever. They didn't even pay attention to the details of it. And pretty much every single one of those people who have never talked about politics before, that's the relevant thing here, guys, by the way. If they were a spiritual guru who talked about politics, then that's a different thing. There are some sort of controlled, like Marianne Williamson, right? Controlled opposition sort of individuals, people who are pretending to play a certain role. I mean people who had no interest whatsoever in politics, never engaged with it. They have all come out and said Trump is here to enact the transformation of the old world into the new. They've all said that. They've all said it. And they're like, yeah, you might not like him, but this is his role, and he's the only one who could do it. And if you listen to astrologers, like actually good ones, they all say the same stuff, that every single thing is aligned for Trump to be executing divine retribution on these people. People don't seem to take this seriously, but I take it seriously, because these are people who have zero agenda whatsoever. They could care less. They've never cared about left or right. They just said, actually, Trump's really important. Trump is real. We need to make sure that Trump wins, because Trump is the key to this stuff. Okay? It's not hero worship. It's just simply a factual assessment of his role. Okay? You don't even have to like him, but you can still accept what he does here. So poor. Look, all right, don't bully. She's still here. She's not saying anything. You have to understand, we get a lot of trolls here. And I'm still not sure you're not a troll, but we'll see. We'll see. We'll see. So, the Supreme Court, I think it's already docketed. I'm not sure if it's accepted yet. It might not be accepted yet. But it will be accepted, guys. You can rest assured it's going to be accepted. You can rest assured. And I want you guys to think more 5D than 3D, okay? How do we think 5D versus 3D/4D? How do we think that way? Here's one of the big things that we do. Okay, one of the big things we do. No, docket is not the same as accepted, but I promise you that this is going to happen. I promise you. I promise you guys, okay? I promise you that the Supreme Court is going to agree to extend the electoral deadline. I promise you guys it's going to happen. And I want you guys to think in 5D, not 3D. 5D sees synchronicity and coincidence. Okay, that's one of the ways that we start to get higher, is that we see the serendipity, we see that certain things can't be coincidences. Okay? Salmon, they're going to wait till the 14th. You're not going to get what you want until the 14th. You're not going to get what you want till Monday. So you might as well chill over the weekend. Which is going to bring me to the next thing here, but I just want to say this with 5D. We have to look at this stuff. Look at this stuff, okay? Amy Coney Barrett gets onto the Supreme Court just before the election. Okay, whether you believe that, maybe Ruth Bader Ginsburg's been dead for a while and she, whatever, but the reality is that we did not get our fifth justice that would ensure the Supreme Court win. We did not get it until right before the election. Okay? And so if you're not able to feel it yet, you have to at least suspend some level of disbelief and say, what are the chances that this could happen? What is the chance of this thing occurring if there was not relevance to it? Think about, okay, Amy Coney Barrett gets on the Supreme Court. People were like, I told you guys, Amy Coney Barrett was not, like, logically speaking, my candidate for the Supreme Court. She wasn't. But there's no question that she had a, positive aura to her. You can feel that. You can see it, right? She shines. Okay, she's an angel, right? She's good. She's a good person. Okay? And it became more clear over time, oh yeah, she has a big role in this. Just became very, very clear that she had a role in this stuff. So, sorry, she came in for a reason. She was pushed in for a reason because she was needed. And she's a spiritually aware enough person to know her role. They all know it. And I told you guys a couple weeks ago that we saw what the Supreme Court's going to do when we saw that precursor case. That was our little teaser against Cuomo. We saw it 2 weeks ago. We saw it with that case against Cuomo. We knew from there that it's going to be a 5-4 vote on the court. I know people want it to be 6-3. I know people want it to be 9-0. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, guys. It won't happen. The 4 that are compromised are not going to give it a hearing. I didn't even know that Trump said that. I didn't even know Trump said that. But we're going to win in SCOTUS. And I know that we don't need to win in SCOTUS. And people have been pointing this out. We don't need to win in SCOTUS. But if you want this to be the transition that we want it to be, we do need to win in SCOTUS, actually. We do need to win in SCOTUS. Because then we're in a situation where Trump is literally doing a military coup. Okay, now it doesn't mean that the coup isn't justified, and you better believe that when they drop the information on the public, yours truly and many others would support that. But Trump not having the Supreme Court backing him means he is doing a military coup, basically. It doesn't matter if people don't like the Supreme Court verdict. Okay, the media can tell you whatever you want, that he's going to create all this Civil War stuff. If the Supreme Court rules in favor, and remember, right now, all it is about continuation. All it is about continuation of the evidence reveal. And then we have DNI Ratcliffe, right? That comes out on the 18th, maybe before. We have, a way to look at this astrologically is we have the sort of end of, we've been in Capricorn. As we move to Aquarius, Pisces, as we move to Aquarius, we are going to start to have the New World energy. And that hits, Paul Publisher told me this, that hits 1718. We get a taste of Aquarius. It goes briefly back, and then after the solstice, we go fully into the New World. So It's going to happen next week. I mean, a week from now, when we talk on CABAL, you can timestamp it. We're going to be talking about a lot of shit's going to have dropped. Yeah, Buttigieg announces China ambassador. It's all such a fucking joke. I mean, you've seen with the vaccines. You've seen with the vaccines, guys. It's now luciferase, which requires like a 6.66 milligram. It's a 666, patent, 6.66 milligram thing. And by the way, I want to just say this about 666. I want to say this about 666 is that it's actually not a negative. It's not a negative number. It's been hijacked. It's been hijacked. It's a powerful number, which is why they hijacked it. 369 are very, very powerful numbers. You can look at Tesla's work on that. Salman, will Trump be president by Christmas? I don't even want to say this stuff anymore. I don't even want to say it anymore. I don't want to guess. I don't want to guess at it. I told you guys the deadlines. He's going to be inaugurated. January 6th is the next big deadline. I do think that after the 14th, we are going to see so much intel dropping. And this is the other thing, is that we are probably going to be having a presidential speech either right before, could be as early as Sunday, it could be as late as the end of next week. We're going to see a presidential address, and I think that that's when the military will start to drop things. That's when the military will start to drop things. But here's the thing. Another thing about SCOTUS, you better believe that SCOTUS has been receiving information from the military. People are like, that's not how SCOTUS works. It's like, hey, sorry, how the fuck do you know how SCOTUS works? Do you think that the military is not going to come to the Supreme Court and tell them, look, this is off record. We're going to tell you this stuff because it's relevant. You should know that this stuff is going on. Come on. You think that this is not, you think that Trump's not going to do that? Think Trump's not going to give security clearances to the Supreme Court? Yeah, it's of course happening. You have to understand the Supreme Court is going to accept the extension and they're going to allow it to play out. But the Supreme Court's important because the Supreme Court gives Trump the legitimacy from a constitutional standpoint. I mean, he could declare martial law. Look, people say, and technically they're correct, that if every institution of the government's corrupted, then the president is supposed to defend the country against all enemies, foreign and domestic. We are able to, they're going to take care of it, right? He can take care of it. He can do that. But from a perception standpoint, that is a real big jump. Okay. And it's not to say he can't do it. It's just to say that he needs a official win that the public will accept, that it won't be able to be determined as much of a military coup. And you get that when you have 5-4 on SCOTUS. Even if it's only 5-4, you can still reveal the corruption. But if he gets that SCOTUS win, and he will get the SCOTUS win, he will get it. Think in terms of coincidence. What did Q always say? How many coincidences before it becomes mathematically impossible? Okay? There's a higher plan going on here. There's a higher plan going on, and Trump fights. Yeah, Salman, I'm the one who's stressed out, right? I'm the one who's stressed out. I love it. I love it. We're gonna get a drink at some point, Salman. We're gonna get a drink. Once we're, we'll be toasting. We'll be toasting. We're having a good time. Now, the last thing, real quick, guys, before we move out. Yeah, SCOTUS is political cover for what happens next. That's 100% correct. And all that stuff, we enter into the second phase December 15th. Second phase hits. I would love to go to Russia. I've never been to Russia. The last thing I'm going to say here is that and this is one of the reasons that prompted me to get on this Periscope, was that I did hear some very interesting stuff and tons of bullshit all around. It's hard to tell, but there was an earthquake on the border. Two things happened recently, okay? There's an earthquake on the border between Maine and New Brunswick. Right. Salman knows already. There's an earthquake on the border, literally on the border between Maine and New Brunswick, province in Canada in the east. And there was an F-16 shot down on the border of Michigan and Canada. Okay. And they're saying it was a pilot, something happened, but the pilot hasn't been recovered. We don't know what happened. We don't have any official stuff. And I got some energy from that. So it's an indication that this is true. I mean, you can say what you fucking want about it, but when I get that stuff, it's an indication that there's truth to it. That there has been, we know that Canada invited Chinese into their country, Chinese military into their country. Okay. We also know that Trump has deployed 5 carrier groups around the United States and 2 helicopter carrier groups, right? So basically, I mean, helicopter carrier groups are like mini carriers that have a Marine battalion and all sorts of helicopters and amphibious assault capability. So we're basically talking about 5 to 7 carriers, depending on how you want to look at it, surrounding the United States right now. All the other carriers, with the exception of one, are off the coast of China. So let's think about that for a second. What's going on here? So the word on the street is that the F-16 was shot down. It had live ordnance. It was shot down, and the word on the street is that there was an underground tunnel, underground base, and 50,000 Chinese, as Salman said, 50,000 Chinese were killed. We also have the Russian fleet moving towards. I don't know. I've heard different things about that. Towards us in the North Atlantic. But guys, look. I'm not saying this stuff to be afraid. I think that there's misinformation in here. But it's not all misinformation. We know that over the last couple of weeks, the military has been on high alert. Okay, Ellis Air Force Base in Nevada, Nellis, I think, right, has been completely inundated with troops. I don't know what that means. Why Nevada? But there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. We don't know. I don't know if Putin's our ally. I don't think. Russia's a complicated case because most of the Russian elite after the last 20 years has been integrated with the global community. But Russia, how much of it is posturing? But we also know that Russia did throw out the cabal. But, it's one of those things like we're going to throw out the cabal, but then maybe we'll rejoin to an extent under our own terms where we benefit. Yeah, more an ally, but not full ally. One of the things that I heard is that the Russian fleet, that there had been some sort of hijacking of the Russian nuclear codes. I don't know. It sounds all bullshit, to be honest. I don't want you guys to put too much stock in this stuff. But I do want you guys to be aware of the fact that there is shit going on the border. There's weird shit going on with the military deployments. And the fun is just getting started. Okay? Fun's just getting started. So I don't know. We got the Trump rally tomorrow, and maybe we'll have a Trump speech on Sunday. But we'll talk soon. A lot of good stuff coming. Stay positive, all right? Don't fall in the fear consciousness. Everything's going to work out great. Just enjoy the ride. See you guys.